The empirical evidence we already discussed suggests that there is no positive correlation between outsourcing and unemployment. In other words, international trade or competition is not the primary job killer. Then we would like to ask, what else could kill jobs? Because it is documented that in the past 2 decades or so, the US economy lost millions of manufacturing jobs. If it's not because of outsourcing, then what is the reason for the job loss? Okay, so that's what we're going to discuss here. And you would find that in the literature there are, many explanations. Okay, and here what we want to discuss is an explanation from the Neoclassical model. Okay, and technically speaking, this is because we learned Neoclassical model back in chapter 3. So we believe here it's a good place for us to apply it to this job loss issue. Okay. All right. In this hypothetical economy, we have only two sectors or two industries. Okay. They're IT and tire manufacturer. Okay. As you may already guessed, that the IT represent the high-tech, okay, fast-growing sector, and tire manufacturing represent the traditional manufacturing sector. All right, and we also use the Cobb-Douglas production function for both sectors for simplicity. Okay, you can definitely use different production function, okay, or even different CD functions, but that's not gonna, fundamentally change the conclusion we will draw. Okay, so here the first sector is IT, and the second sector is tire manufacturer. Okay, please note that A1, K1, L1, and A2, K2, L2, they are different. Okay. All right, there are several assumptions we lead to proceed. The first one is W1 equals W2 here. W1 represents the wage in IT sector. W2 is the wage in tire manufacturer. Okay, and we're assuming these two wages are equal simply because the labor can move between the two sectors. Okay, so eventually the wage will be equal because of the movement of labor. Okay, and the second assumption, we're going to say that economy-wide labor is fully employed. In other words, there's no one out there looking for jobs. Okay, now this is a strong assumption. Okay, we admit. And later, after we finish our discussion about this, then you guys could think about, if we release this assumption by saying that, the labor is not fully employed, would that change our conclusion? Okay. And the third assumption, again, for simplicity, we assume that A2, K1, K2, P1, and P2 are all fixed. Here, P1 is the price of the IT products, and P2 is the price of tires. Okay. All right, now we're going to look at what will happen if the IT sector experiences fast technological innovation. Okay. Here, when we say fast technological innovation, we mean in a relative sense. In other words, compared to the tire manufacturing sector, the IT sector has a faster innovation. Okay. All right. Here we're gonna talk about three different ways to show the influence. Okay, the first one is a mathematical derivation, which we will discuss, in a minute in this video. And we will also talk about economic intuition. Okay, as emphasized many times, this is the most important one. And finally, the graphical analysis, we're gonna leave these for you guys to do. Okay, and then during our virtual meeting, we can talk about this. Okay, the graphical part. All right, now, first of all, the mathematical derivation. Okay? And we talk about this because this is kind of, step by step. The reasoning process is pretty organized. Okay, and you just follow the math and you can figure it out. Okay, so first of all, the fast technological innovation. If you remember back in chapter 3, we said that in Cobb-Douglas function, the constant A represents technology. Okay, so what the question, the example says means A1 rises. Okay, and then the immediate effect would be on the real wage. Okay, now here the real wage in IT sector equals W1 over P1. Okay, again from chapter 3, the Neoclassical model we discussed, we knew that the real wage equals marginal product of labor in sector 1. Okay, and mathematically that means we take the partial derivative of y1 with respect to L1. Okay, and then this would be the the math process, okay, which again you guys should already be familiar with, given what we have done in chapter 3. So eventually the MPL1 equals 2/3 times A1 times K1 over L1 to the power of 1/3. All right, now here let's focus on the last part of this equation. Remember, we said A1 rises because of the technological innovation, right? Suppose K1 and L1 stays the same. You would find that here the marginal product of labor increases in the IT sector. Okay, so MPL1 increases as a result of the increase in A1. So does the real wage in sector 1. Remember, the real wage equals MPL1, right? Of course, this guy, the ratio would increase. Okay. Now, the next step is, remember, we assume that P1 is fixed. Okay, the price of IT product is given. So the ratio itself goes up. That means W1, the nominal wage in IT sector, has to rise, right? So that the whole ratio would go up. All right. Now, if W1 goes up, that means the IT sector offers a higher wage. And to be able to compete with the IT industry, the tire manufacturers have to offer a higher wage, right? So the W2 would increase as well, okay, to match the increase in W1. All right. Again, the incentive for the tire manufacturers to do this is simply keep their workers, okay, in the tire factory. Now, here, let's look at the real wage in sector 2. Again, it equals marginal product of labor in the tire manufacturing industry, and we just take the partial derivative of y2 with respect to L2, okay? After the math derivation, we finally get these, okay? Now, this time, we want to focus on the left-hand side, okay? And remember, we said W2 rises, right? And P2, by assumption, is fixed. So here the whole ratio increases. Okay, and then we look at the right hand side. Okay, so MPL2 has to rise. Okay, and then when we look at the right hand side, by assumption, A2, the technological innovation in tire manufacturing sector, and the capital in tire manufacturing sector, K2, are both assumed to be fixed. All right. So to make this equation still equal, the two sides are still equal, L2 has to go down. Okay, so that this ratio K2 over L2 will go up to match the increase in real wage or the MPL2, right? So here L2 has to fall, all right? Now, if the L2 falls, the output of tire manufacturers would go down, okay? Because remember, the output equals A2 times K2 to the power of 1/3 times L2 to the power of 2/3. A2 and K2 are fixed. With a smaller L2, of course, the Y2 would go down. Okay? Now, here, if the consumers still want to buy the same amount of Y2 as before, what they have to do is to import from other countries. Okay? Now, through this mathematical derivation, the first thing and the most important thing we find is here trade is the effect rather than the cause. Okay, so when you look at the beginning, it's because of a technological innovation. All right, there was no trade at the beginning. At the end, we find that they have to import simply because the tire output decreases. All right. Once again, the trade or the higher import or more outsourcing, that's not the reason or the job killers. Okay? Instead, it's the result, it's the consequence. Okay? All right. Now let's look at the economic intuition behind this math work. Okay? So we start with the IT experiences the faster innovation, right? And that means the IT sector becomes more profitable. So it tends to expand. Okay. Now during the expansion, it will attract more workers from the tire manufacturers. Here we actually used the assumption that the L is fully employed. Okay. So IT sector, when it leads more workers, it will get it from the tire manufacturing factories. Okay, there's no other places the IT sector could get more labor. All right, and then the tire manufacturers have to offer a higher wage to keep these workers, as we already said. Right now, given the decrease in profitability and increase in labor cost, the tire manufacturers have to lay off workers. Okay? And then the tire output falls as a result. Okay? And so eventually we said tire needs to be imported to meet consumers' demand. All right? And the general conclusion we could draw here is the unequal technological innovation kills manufacturing jobs. Okay, it's not because of trade or outsourcing. It's because in our economy, some sectors grow faster. Okay, they can have a faster innovation, so that kills the manufacturing jobs. Okay, and as I said, graphical analysis. I just leave these for you guys to figure it out, and we can talk about this during the meeting. The hint I can give you guys is you can look at the supply and demand of labor for both sectors, okay, and see how that changes because of this. And eventually, what I also want to ask you guys to think about, how the